Damien receives a hint after Nick saves Sharon from Phyllis. Holden will read details from Nate Hastings' background check and mention that Damien King's mother was formerly employed by Nate's father, according to The Young and the Restless recap for Tuesday, February 4th. Damien will urge Holden to continue pretending to be him in order to find out more, but he will presume that must be the connection. Holden fears that if Amy Lewis discovers that he is posing as Damien, the whole hoax will blow up, but Damien will tell him to keep out of her line of sight. Amy will be worried about Damien's reaction at his most recent encounter with Nate at his flat. Nate and Audra Charles will say that Damien only needs time to recover, but Amy will worry that her illness won't give her that type of time. Nate will forecast, nevertheless, that Damien will check his history and eventually get in contact. Nate will be happy to receive the call since Holden will shortly get him on the phone and pretend to be Damien once more. When Phyllis Summers and Sharon Newman meet at Crimson Lights, they will discuss Ian Ward's confession to Heather Stevens' murder. In order for Phyllis to accept that everything is true, Sharon will also remind her that Jordan was the one who drove her off the road. Phyllis will nevertheless make it plain that she will never be able to forgive Sharon for her part in all of this. Sharon will acknowledge that she was insane on PCP and dealing with Cameron Kirsten's hallucinations, even though she will accept blame for framing Daniel Romalotti Jr. Sharon will observe that Phyllis is still seated because she successfully resisted Cameron's demands to get rid of her. When Sharon acts as like she should be thankful for that, Phyllis will laugh. Nick Newman will attempt to place the blame on Ian when he interrupts the heated conversation since he returned to attack Sharon and Mariah Copeland. Phyllis will maintain that since Heather was a collateral injury, Sharon is actually to blame. Nick will encourage Phyllis to move on, but she will argue that she was only reiterating her position with Sharon before walking away. After Phyllis leaves, Sharon will discuss the psychological effects of everything and express gratitude to Nick for all of his help. Sharon will offer Nick a heartfelt hug because she won't know what she would have done without him. On Tuesday's episode of YNR, Billy Abbott will bring home all of Sally Spectra's favorite takeaway food. Billy will tell them over lunch that he's almost done convincing Phyllis and Daniel to support his business idea. Sally will be worried about that news because Billy and Phyllis are both powder kegs, and when you combine the two, chaos is certain. Sally will continue to feel nervous even though Billy will pretend to be sympathetic and defend Phyllis. Sally will caution Billy that dealing with Phyllis is like swimming with sharks. She will finally ruin the atmosphere by helping herself to lunch before Phyllis interrupts with her arrival. Before Sally leaves, Billy will make an effort to find out why Phyllis is there. Phyllis will criticize Sally's interior design choices and seem shocked that they are so far ahead in their relationship once she and Billy are alone. In the end, Billy will tell Phyllis that he must respect his personal boundaries. According to spoilers for The Young and the Restless, Phyllis might continue to be a problem as Billy and Sally's romance develops. We'll keep you informed of any developments. Damien receives a hint after Nick saves Sharon from Phyllis. The drama in Genoa City never ceases, and Tuesday's episode of The Young and the Restless brought even more intrigue, deception, and emotional confrontations. As Damien King delves deeper into his past and the people tied to it, Nick Newman once again steps up to defend Sharon Newman, particularly against the ever-unforgiving Phyllis Summers. Meanwhile, relationships continue to be tested and secrets threaten to unravel. Let's take a deep dive into the events of this gripping episode. Damien and Holden's deception. Holden finds himself with a new piece of information after reading through Nate Hastings' background check. The document reveals that Damien King's mother was once employed by Nate's father, which sparks a wave of curiosity in Damien. Damien, ever the strategist, urges Holden to continue impersonating him, believing this connection could be crucial in understanding his past. However, Holden grows increasingly wary, fearing that their charade will come crashing down if Amy Lewis, who is already suspicious, discovers the deception. "You have to stay out of her line of sight," Damien warns him. "We can't afford any mistakes now." Amy, however, remains troubled by Damien's recent encounter with Nate at his apartment. While Nate and Audra Charles try to reassure her, insisting that Damien just needs time to process everything, Amy knows her illness doesn't afford her the luxury of patience. She's running out of time, and she needs answers. As if on cue, Holden, still posing as Damien, finally calls Nate. Nate, having suspected that Damien would eventually reach out, is both relieved and intrigued by the conversation. The two agree to meet soon, setting the stage for an even deeper unraveling of Damien's mysterious past. Phyllis and Sharon's tense encounter. Over at Crimson Lights, Sharon Newman and Phyllis Summers find themselves face-to-face, and the tension is palpable. Their discussion quickly turns to Ian Ward's confession about Heather Stevens' murder, but Phyllis remains skeptical. "You expect me to believe that everything is just wrapped up nicely?" Phyllis scoffs. Sharon, unfazed, reminds her that it was Jordan who ran her off the road, and that Ian's confession is solid. But Phyllis, never one to let bygones be bygones, refuses to let Sharon off the hook for her past mistakes. "I will never forgive you," Phyllis declares. "Not for what you did to Daniel. Not for any of it." Sharon acknowledges her past, admitting she was out of her mind on PCP and haunted by Cameron Kirsten's hallucinations when she framed Daniel Romalotti Jr. However, she points out that despite everything, Phyllis is still standing because she, Sharon, fought against Cameron's manipulations to truly harm her. "Should I be thanking you for that?" Phyllis asks mockingly, letting out a humorless laugh. Before the argument escalates further, Nick Newman steps in. He urges Phyllis to direct her anger at Ian, the real threat to both Sharon and Mariah Copeland. But Phyllis, unwilling to shift the blame, insists that Sharon is responsible. Heather was merely collateral damage in a war Sharon had no business being part of. Frustrated but unwilling to engage further, Phyllis walks away, leaving Sharon shaken. Nick, ever the protector, comforts her, offering his unwavering support. Overwhelmed by emotion, Sharon pulls him into a heartfelt hug, whispering, "I don't know what I would do without you." Billy and Sally's growing concerns. Meanwhile, Billy Abbott surprises Sally Spectra by bringing home all of her favorite takeout dishes. Their relationship, still fresh and filled with cautious excitement, is momentarily blissful as they sit down to eat. "I'm this close to convincing Phyllis and Daniel to back my business plan," Billy announces between bites. Sally nearly chokes on her food. The thought of Billy and Phyllis collaborating on anything sets off alarms in her mind. "You and Phyllis are like dynamite," she warns. "Put the two of you together, and chaos is inevitable." Billy, ever the optimist, dismisses her worries, insisting he knows how to handle Phyllis. But Sally remains uneasy. "Dealing with Phyllis is like swimming with sharks," she says gravely. "You think you're in control until she decides otherwise." Their lunch takes an even more dramatic turn when Phyllis herself arrives unannounced. Sally stiffens immediately, sensing trouble. Billy, sensing the shift in mood, asks Sally to stay, but she chooses to leave, not wanting to engage in another one of Phyllis's games. Alone with Billy, Phyllis wastes no time making herself at home, criticizing Sally's taste in interior decor and subtly questioning just how serious Billy is about this relationship. "I didn't realize you were moving this fast," she remarks with feigned surprise. Billy, unwilling to let Phyllis manipulate him, sets a firm boundary. "You don't get to decide how I live my life," he says. "Respect that." What's next in Genoa City? As The Young and the Restless continues, Phyllis is sure to remain a thorn in Billy and Sally's budding relationship. Meanwhile, Damien's continued search for the truth will lead to more shocking revelations, and Sharon will have to navigate her complex feelings about Nick and Phyllis's continued animosity. Will Holden's deception be exposed? Will Phyllis find a way to sabotage Billy's happiness yet again? And will Sharon ever truly move on from her troubled past? Stay tuned for more drama, as Genoa City is never short on secrets, betrayals, and unexpected twists. Damien receives a hint after Nick saves Sharon from Phyllis. Holden sat at the dimly lit desk, flipping through the pages of Nate Hastings' background check. His fingers traced the words carefully, absorbing every detail. It was a thorough report, but one particular note caught his eye. Damien King's mother had been employed by Nate's father years ago. This was more than just a coincidence, it was a lead. Damien, standing behind Holden, leaned in closer. "That must be the connection," he muttered. "Keep pretending to be me. I need to know more." Holden hesitated. If Amy finds out I'm posing as you, the whole hoax could blow up in our faces. Damien smirked. Then stay out of her way. Just do what I ask. Meanwhile, Amy Lewis paced the length of her apartment, wringing her hands. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about Damien's reaction to Nate during their last encounter. Nate and Audra Charles had reassured her that Damien just needed time to recover, but Amy's intuition screamed otherwise. She didn't have the luxury of time, not with her illness looming over her like a dark cloud. He'll look into his past eventually, Nate had said. And when he does, he'll reach out. Amy could only hope that when the time came, Damien would be ready. Sure enough, Holden, still masquerading as Damien, soon dialed Nate's number. He took a deep breath and steadied his voice. Nate, it's me. We need to talk. Nate's voice carried relief. Finally. I was beginning to wonder when you'd call. Tensions rise between Phyllis and Sharon. At Crimson Lights, Sharon Newman and Phyllis Summers sat across from each other, the tension palpable. The discussion centered on Ian Ward's confession to Heather Stevens' murder, but the animosity between them ran much deeper. Sharon sighed. Phyllis, you have to accept that everything Ian said was true. And Jordan, she was the one who ran me off the road. Phyllis scoffed, her expression hardening. That doesn't change the fact that I will never forgive you for your role in all of this. Sharon met her glare with quiet resolve. I was dealing with Cameron Kirsten's hallucinations. I was out of my mind on PCP. But I do take responsibility for framing Daniel. Phyllis folded her arms. And yet here you sit, alive and well. You resisted Cameron's demands to get rid of me, and now you want credit for that. Before Sharon could respond, Nick Newman approached, sensing the rising hostility. Blame Ian, he interjected. He came back to attack Sharon and Mariah. Heather was collateral damage. Phyllis clenched her jaw. That doesn't change the fact that Sharon played a role in this mess. Nick's patience was wearing thin. Phyllis, move on. With a final glare at Sharon, Phyllis huffed. I was just stating my position. After she left, Sharon exhaled deeply. That woman will never let go of her grudges. Nick offered a reassuring smile. She's Phyllis. But you have me, Sharon. Touched by his unwavering support, Sharon pulled him into a tight embrace. I don't know what I would do without you. Billy and Sally's dinner disrupted. Across town, Billy Abbott had set the perfect mood for a relaxing evening with Sally Spectra. He had gone the extra mile, bringing home all of her favorite takeout dishes. As they settled in for dinner, Billy casually mentioned his latest business endeavor. I'm almost there, he said. I've nearly convinced Phyllis and Daniel to back my idea. Sally nearly dropped her fork. Phyllis? And you? In the same room? Billy, that's a disaster waiting to happen. Billy chuckled. Oh, come on. Phyllis and I have a complicated history, sure, but I can handle her. Sally wasn't convinced. Dealing with Phyllis is like swimming with sharks. You think you're fine until she bites. As if on cue, the doorbell rang. Sally opened the door to find Phyllis standing there, a knowing smirk on her face. Am I interrupting something? Sally stiffened. Actually, we were just... Great, Phyllis cut in, stepping inside uninvited. She took one sweeping glance around the apartment and wrinkled her nose. Interesting decor choices. Didn't expect you two to be this settled. Billy frowned. Phyllis, what do you want? She smirked. Just a friendly chat. Sally rolled her eyes.